Generation Z media company Overtime is back at it again, and this time they got something new up their sleeve for their 7-on-7 football league. Hello, everyone. This is Jabari Young, senior writer at Forbes, and in a minute, I'll be talking to Overtime CEO Dan Porter about building his company, what's in store for OT7, their 7-on-7 football league, OTE, and more. Dan Porter right now. I mean, listen, hop straight into it. Season 2 of OT7, right? I mean, this is what the company's announcing. What's different? And I'm making sure players are still not paid for this one, right?
Players are not paid.
Okay.
Eligibility remains intact.
But again, what's different? I mean, you're going into new cities now, right? Any learnings from season 1 that you're taking into season 2?
We're going to a bunch of new cities. We're going to be in Texas. We're possibly going to be in Southern California. We're going to be in Arizona, Florida, potentially. We're finalizing. So really, it's kind of like season 1 was almost like we went right to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where we were. In season 2, we're creating a number. We're extending the season by essentially 3 months as opposed to 1 month. And we're playing in a number of places across the country, both to attract teams into the league and also so fans in different parts of the country can experience it. So it's kind of like you take a step, you play, you have a champion, and then you really go to the next level. And in addition, we're bringing in 2 sponsors. Snickers is one, and then working with the FDA on anti-vaping campaign is number 2. So I think everything's just going to be bigger and better and more across the United States.
Yeah. And again, OT7, 7-on-7 football league. Again, players are not paid for this league, right? Then unlike OTE, Overtime Elite, they're paid for that one, but not for football, though. That still remains intact.
Correct. And even in OTE now, about a third of the players are paid and about 2/3 choose to maintain their eligibility. In football, every single player maintains their eligibility. They participate for the competition. They participate for the exposure. We've seen players move up and down in the rankings. And in college football, NIL is a huge incentive once players arrive on campus. And so they have incentive to kind of show out and build up their credibility and their awareness. And then they're able to capitalize on it legally when they're in college.
I definitely want to get your opinion on NIL, but making sure Cam Newton's still involved with OT7?
We still work with Cam, and we hope that his team will come and play and participate as we finalize the list of teams. Okay.
Profitability front, is OT7 making money for Overtime yet?
Well, given that, again, we brought in the real cost from the FDA, anti-vaping and Snickers, and we have fans coming, I wouldn't say we're profitable, but we are definitely revenue generating. I think when we finalize a media rights deal around that, that will take us over the top. But it's going to be it's a large product, and in addition, this year we're going to live stream some of the games, which we did not do last year. Last year we kind of played, held them, and then put them out afterwards, similar to our OTE strategy. So it's very similar. And then in season 2, you kind of come out and let fans watch in real time.
Yeah. Listen, I was intrigued when me and you spoke about the OT7 last year and Cam was getting involved, that, listen, you take these clips, these highlight clips of players doing these amazing, skills and within this group. And, obviously it's media content for them and everybody wants that nowadays in this social media environment. So I'm intrigued. Anything that you learned on the business front that you said, okay, we can't take this into season 2 that you eliminated?
That we eliminated? I would say there's nothing really that we eliminated. Most of it was things that we added. I think I didn't have a deep enough appreciation for how passionate the college football audience is in general, meaning that I knew that fans of Overtime would want to watch kind of their favorite kind of pre-college football players who were playing, but I don't think I fully appreciated how passionate the Alabama fan base, the Auburn fan base, the Georgia fan base was, where they would also want to say, hey, this guy's going to be our quarterback. This guy's going to be our wide receiver. So it's almost like 2 layers of fandom. And I think that we've really been able to locate it a nice place among the kind of college football fan base, which, as you know, is giant as well.
Yeah. Well, listen, you over time, you built this company 2006, and we get into your background in a minute. 2022 was quite the year for you. You raised another 100 million. Liberty Media is involved. Sapphire, we appreciate the work that those guys are doing over there and finding startup companies. Anything changed as far as what over time is taking from 2022 to 2023? I'm looking at 75 million social media followers, 2 billion video streams. That's according to you guys. Any of those statistics that you expect to improve on in 2023?
So we've grown already to 3 billion video streams.
3 billion.
Yeah. So I would say ultimately, it's kind of like you're able to carve out a space, and eventually everyone can watch what you do and figure out what you do. And even if they can copy you, they're not you and they don't have your brand. But it puts the onus on us as essentially a brand, a community, a creator of digital sports content that resonates with the next generation, to continue to innovate.
Yeah.
I mean, a large portion of our audience right now is over 21 because they started following us when they were 16 and 17 years old, and that was 5 or 6 years ago. And so, we're still kind of in Gen Z, but they're kind of micro trends within that. There was no TikTok when we started over time. And so you're constantly adjusting and looking for ways that you can innovate as other people kind of look to you and try to copy what you do. And I think for us, it's continuing to work with talent and develop our own talent in-house. It's continuing to work more deeply with brands around original IP that we create, shows, draft house shows, not just our leagues, but other things like that. And then really expanding the purview of our leagues, both leagues, OTE and OT7, more games, more teams, more live streams. And so step by step, you kind of move there and continue to innovate, because in real time, especially because you're on a digital platform, you're able to get kind of analytics about what people are watching and not watching. And that's obviously very different than linear television, where you don't get a ton of analytics about who it is and where they are.
Yeah.
And so that allows us to continually tweak the product, because at the end of the day, I say, like, it's sports, but it's an entertainment product. And if nobody watches, it's not sports, it's nothing. And so you've got to meet the audience where they are.
Well, sports is entertainment, right? So I keep telling people that they look at sports as this real thing. I said, no, this is entertainment. It may not be scripted like the WWE, but it's still entertainment. So I love that you said that. The guys at Sapphire, venture capital guys, they always have a very interesting eyesight on companies. And then speaking to them, and they just went through their raise, they are so excited about Overtime because you guys went from just a platform, right, to one company that now has your own IP, and you're able to, take that IP and build marketing around it. And, listen, this is what the pro leagues have done for years. That transition, right, going from just a platform to one that owns its own IP, how did you do that, and how important did you know adding your own IP was to this mix?
I think for us, we always understood that you had to own something. There's a large part of the internet that's about kind of aggregation and taking content from other places. And it's a good way to start because you can tap into things that tend to be kind of viral, but you've got to own. And in the first iteration, we built our own camera technology for the iPhone that let us get out in the world and capture kind of basketball and football, kind of next up pro highlights faster than anyone else had. And speed was really our weapon. And we won with speed and we won with distribution. But we still had to create something that we owned, because people can figure out and they can catch up to you. And for us, it was really key. And it was kind of that moment where you're just like, okay, I'm covering everyone else's league, everyone else's game, and it's making them bigger and bigger. And it's good for me because I get the views, but I don't have any participation economically in the underlying asset. And so creating the IP is kind of like it's an insane leap. Like, just because you cover it doesn't mean that you can do it. And I was saying to the team kind of this week, like, it's not just the creation of it. The first year, you just literally have to power through it. I mean, we have 5 to 6 times more social media followers for Overtime Elite than we did last year. And there were times last year that we put out stuff that people watched, and there was times that we put out stuff that people weren't aware of and they didn't really watch. And this year, every time I go to a game, the arena is overflowing and people are hanging over the edges. And last year, sometimes it was full and sometimes it was less full. And you really, if you could power through that first year and make it and keep your optimism and your focus high, I think you can realize as you get into the second year, oh, we really laid the groundwork. And sometimes in the first year, the metrics were amazing, and sometimes they were kind of And if it's really about making it through that and laying the foundation, and then you have a platform that you can start to tweak the rules and the camera angles and the voice and everything else like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you guys are, as Sapphire, you guys are like an HBO now, right? You own your own IP. Like, that's the name of the game in the media business, owning your own IP. So, listen, congrats on that move, because I know it wasn't easy to transition from just a platform and studying you guys. You started down in Florida and just testing this amongst high schools, and now to see where it's grown at, man, it's pretty impressive stuff. Listen. Still a lot of tech companies went through some hurt last year. It's still over 500 million valuation we looking at, or were you amongst those that got hurt a little bit?
We did not get hurt.
Okay.
Our valuation kept going up. And I think it's execution. And honestly, we didn't overhire. We kind of stretched ourselves and we had kind of a lean mindset, in part because obviously we had to make it through March 2020 and the pandemic we had to take pay cuts. We had to really stay lean. And I think that mentality stayed with us. And weirdly, we were kind of like absent from the hype cycle because we weren't projecting all this crazy stuff and hiring all these crazy people. And there were all these sexy companies that were, and we just kind of focused and did our thing. And now some of those sexy companies are less sexy. And I think we've always believed like the best valuation is a fair valuation for the investors and for us. And that lets everybody have a positive economic outcome. There's no reality where you just hype your valuation and get it kind of disconnected from reality. So we've been very real in the context of some things, maybe a little ordinary, and now ordinary is back in fashion. So we're in a good spot.
Did you always know you wanted to own your own media company, or did that come in between your career at William Morris Agency?
I actually never wanted to work in sports, and I never wanted to work in media. I think for me, I spent the first third of my career as an educator. I was a high school teacher, and I was on the early team of Teach for America, and eventually the president of Teach for America. And then kind of the middle of my career in tech startups. I started an online ticketing company I sold, and I started a mobile games company. And for me, I think what I was really interested in was essentially kind of consumer and culture, ultimately creating and making things that people used and that brought them joy in their everyday life. And people always say to me, were you a sports fan? And I always say, I was a Philadelphia sports fan, meaning that, being from any city like a Philadelphia, that's not in New York or in LA, the local sports team is a huge part of culture. It's a huge part of what connects you. I'm on a group chat with my 50-something-year-old friends from high school, and that's what we talk about still. And so to me, the intersection between sports and culture was huge. And then you add into that generational change. I mean, every generation, I listen to different music than my parents. My kids listen to different music than I do. And that's the same as how people consume sports and how they look for sports as part of their identity. So to me, it was really about just kind of tapping into culture. And I've worked in music and I've worked in gaming, and those are all attributes of culture as well. And so sports became a really cool opportunity to work, especially as digital kind of decoupled the existing audience from how I grew up, which was sitting on the couch watching a big screen TV. And we know that that's not how young people consume sports anymore. And I just saw that opportunity and I was like, let's go. And I kind of tapped into like, what does it mean to me as somebody from Philly? Because like, we want to prove that we're out there. We had luck and we haven't had luck. And kind of that psychology was really what kind of helped me tap into it and understand it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you say that, being from Philadelphia, it gives me such a great vision too, even covering the business side of it, because I always tell people Ed Snyder was the best owner in sports I've ever encountered in my life. And that man offered me a job back in the day. And I said, man, that being from Philly is just a different type. It's not New York. It's not, Los Angeles. It's not San Antonio, another city that I hold dear and close to my heart. It's Philadelphia, and that gives you a great foundation. But you mentioned music. And I'm a big hip hop fan because it's, 50th anniversary of hip hop coming up. It was this year. You are a hip hop fan? Your favorite artist?
I'm a huge hip hop fan. I spent a lot of time in Atlanta here. So Migos, Metro Boomin, 21 Savage,
Huh?
Future, the whole Atlanta music scene. I kind of, grew up in my seminal time in the kind of
Yeah,
like Big Daddy Kane, Eric B. and Rakim when I was a public school teacher in Brooklyn. And they always say, I think Two Chainz had an album. It's like musicians want to be rappers, rappers want to be musicians. And I love being in basketball because it's so close to the culture.
absolutely.
And I feel like, especially with OT7, because they play without helmets and it's really fast paced and you're able to get a sense of the personalities. Quavo has a team that participates in our tournament as well. I think you're seeing a greater and greater overlap obviously when the Eagles went to Super Bowl and they played Meek Mill, Dreams and Nightmares and everything else like that. And so that intersection to me, again, it's that bubble of culture and music plays a part and obviously sneakers and style and so forth. And from that, I think young people figure out what their identity is.
Yeah.
And so I'm just I guess I'm a different person in that because I'm not a classic sports executive. I'm looking at the intersection of those and what it means and what it resonates, as opposed to how long the shot clock should be or what, how many fouls somebody should get.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to say Drake since he was one of your investors, but I mean, I guess not. And it's nothing wrong with if you're going to be in Atlanta.
Everyone likes Drake.
Absolutely.
So,
Not everybody, but listen,
yeah.
the majority of the people do like Drake. You can't. But again, I thought he was one of your investors. I thought you would say him. But still, you mentioned some.
I will say Drake. When you come to a game at OT Arena, I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, he's going to show. I mean, listen, he's an investor, so he should be there, right? He should be supporting the product. Listen, you mentioned NIL, and I wanted to ask you, you like it?
I love NIL. Damian Wilkins, who is our head of basketball, who played in the NBA for a number of years, and his father and his uncle Dominique Wilkins obviously played in the NBA as well, was telling us a story yesterday about when he was at the University of Georgia and he went into the college bookstore and bought his Wilkins University of Georgia jersey, and sold it to a friend who really wanted the jersey, not even for that much money. And he almost lost his eligibility over it. And he's like, wait, I bought this jersey. It's mine. And it has my name on it. And I can't even sell it for $20 to a friend of mine. And I think that absurdity has existed for a long time. I think we have to be careful not to abuse it, but you own your own name. You own your own image and likeness. The idea that you can't profit off of it, but somebody who's in music or acting or a YouTuber can profit off of it, I think is just silly. I think the rules exist to protect against bad actors, but there's no reason if 3% of people are bad actors that you should punish 97% of people who are good actors.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I talked to college professors about this and, still trying to get a gauge on it. But, the one thing that I do respect, especially, professors over at Columbia, they always say you open Pandora's box, right? You're going to get everything with it. What don't you like about it? Because some of the concern is that, you want athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. It's everybody else that's going to profit as well as that pay-for-play type of stuff that can go on in that. What don't you like about NIL, and do you think that's going to be dangerous?
I mean, you're absolutely right. The pay-for-play, basically, it means you cannot use name, image, likeness, or NIL as an inducement to come to a university. And I think there are a lot of passionate boosters who have a lot of money across the country. And sometimes you hear athletes say, well, the NIL deal there wasn't big enough for me to kind of commit there. And that is contrary to what it's supposed to be used for. It's supposed to be used for, I've chosen your school, and now I'm playing and I can sign autographs and sell my jersey. And it's hard, it's challenging to regulate that. Look, it's challenging for securities in the stock market to regulate 8,000 public companies too. And so I think that we just have to encourage good actors, and there has to be, I'm sure there will end up being some cases which will be used as examples. But just because people abuse it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And by the way, how many athletes are there who have worked and worked and worked, and college may be their best opportunity to essentially be remunerated for all of their efforts. They may not go to the NFL or the NBA, And if I work and make my t-shirt business and go out and sell t-shirts, like I should be able to make money. And if I play and people want to buy my jersey, I should be able to make money. I mean, that's kind of American in a way. And even if the greatest I ever am is playing in my college team, like that's something that benefits me and my family and so forth. So
Yeah.
I'm an avid supporter of it. But people have to play by the rules just like they have to do everywhere else.
I also get concerned with that human aspect too, man. That offensive lineman who may not get the big deal from NIL, but his job is to protect the $1 million quarterback back there. Who, I mean, that's the type of stuff that I think about because of the human element of it. But it's still so much to see about how NIL will roll out. But you mentioned basketball. OTE is the dominant IP right now under the Overtime media company. Listen, that league is so interesting. Again, $100,000 you promise players. Not everybody takes it, as you mentioned. What have you learned there now? Because you're heading into year 3 of this?
We're heading into next year will be year 3. In the middle of March, we'll have our
Right.
championship and finish year 2. I would say, what have I learned? Number one, helping athletes navigate all the challenges, especially when they're at a kind of pivotal point, 17 to 19 years old, is a never-ending kind of opportunity. I had teenagers myself, and figuring out how to kind of surf the highs and the lows is something that we pride ourselves on doing. So whether our athletes go to the NBA or play basketball elsewhere, go into life, they're ready for that. I would say the second thing I've learned is that, in terms of marketing the league, both to kind of come and watch in person or to become a fan more broadly, like you have to experience it. There's no billboard or TV commercial that's the same as walking into the arena or seeing a highlight. And it's like if you can get people to you to experience it, they get it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, even NBA players come to the arena to watch a game and they say, "Oh, I get it. I know you sent me all this material and you explained it to me, but now when I see it." And I think the third is really like you need a differentiated product in the market. And college basketball is a very specific type of basketball. The NBA is a very specific type of basketball, both incredibly successful. And for us, we have a differentiated product. It's a high energy, jump out of the gym product with kind of some social movers, some future NBA players. And you're constantly trying to tell the story and tweak so that people come and they like that. And I think college football has done a great job of that, right? You don't go to an NFL game and see a quarterback run for 6 touchdowns and throw for 4 more touchdowns, but sometimes you do in college football, and that's why it's a different product. And it goes back to our original conversation. Ultimately, sports is entertainment and it's culture, and you have to realize what your niche is. And you have to provide the audience something they can't get anywhere else. And that's really what we focus on.
Absolutely, absolutely. OTE also, one of the things when I talk to NBA scouts, one of the skepticisms that they do have is say, hey, how are these kids getting better because they're playing against each other over and over and over again? If OTE is going to be successful, and you let me know if I'm wrong, I would think that you have to see some of these kids take a leap and get to the NBA, so that way you can sell that hope to those guys to come into the league, knowing that that's a path to get there. But how do you solve that problem with helping them develop to get better all around games so that they can go move on and be much better at that too?
I would say 3 things. Number one, the average player in our league gains 10 to 15 pounds of muscle a year. We have an extremely developed HPD, performance and development program, where they're really essentially building up their bodies, learning about their bodies, nutrition, and so forth. And so you look at photos of players that we sign by the time they're ready to go to college or the NBA, they are bigger, faster, and stronger. Number 2, you have an opportunity in your own venue to really focus on skills and basketball IQ.
Mm-hmm.
And our players have a very high level understanding of the game. We do a ton of video. We do a ton of breakdown. You have access to former NBA players and trainers of NBA players. And so everybody talks about competition, and competition matters, and playing each other matters. But there's so many other variables. And then the third is what the scouts say to me is, they say that high school basketball and to an extent college basketball is not that useful in scouting because oftentimes there's a mismatch. And in high school, you can go see somebody play and maybe they drop 40 points, but they're dropping 40 points on another team that has nobody who will ever go to the NBA.
Yeah.
They say to me, I'd rather come and see somebody score 12 points at OTE against some of the best players and future pros than I would somebody kind of dunk on their classmates over and over again. So I think we're in a great place. We've had almost every single team come through scouts, GM. We're working with Kentucky. We're working with Stanford. And again, when they come and they see our commitment to basketball development, to skill development, and the high level of competition, I feel like they get it.
Yeah. Spoken like a true Philadelphia salesman right there. You know, I like that, man. Listen, before I let you wrap, man, looking at the overall business again, Overtime as a company has been running up since 2016, and now you have the IP with Overtime Elite and OT7, and you're building more IP. I know anything in 2023 that's going to be coming that we can look out for?
There's nothing that I can announce yet, other than I do a lot of research and gather data about if you are a follower of Overtime, what else do you like to watch? And I will say football, basketball. I will say that kind of boxing and MMA has a very high correlation. There's a large amount of interest from kind of Gen Z and millennials who follow us. And so we're kind of constantly reading those tea leaves to try to understand where our audience is interested. But there's a good chance that we're going to launch one more product in 2023 in sports. I think it's going to be pretty different. It's going to be outside of high school, and we're getting ready for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking at it as a whole, again, you're talking about a $500 million plus business here. What's the biggest surprise that you've learned in running Overtime? Positive surprise, biggest positive surprise.
I think the biggest positive surprise that I've learned is that you start out thinking it's about video views and streams and followers, but what you really realize is it's about community and it's about passion. And that if you tell the right stories and you connect with your audience, you become a brand in the community that they identify with. I went to the NBA All-Star game last year, and there were 3 17, 18-year-olds in my section who were wearing Overtime hoodies. I would say that I knew them, but I didn't know them. I'd never seen them before. And to me, the idea that like we started telling stories on social platforms and people wore a hoodie that said Overtime because they were like, that's my brand. They felt connected to it the way they feel connected to a Nike or a Gucci or any other brand that kind of represents who they are. Like that was a surprise. And then it felt good. And not only was it surprise, it was kind of this like loop where then all the people who worked here would say, oh, I saw somebody in my elevator. I saw somebody at the airport wearing Overtime. And that I kind of always say, like, if we don't build a company where our internal culture and our community is strong, how can we build a company where externally people feel part of our community? And so people talk about community, but when you see it in the wild, you realize, oh, that's what it's really about. It's not about the video streams and the likes and everything else like that. It's about making something that people feel like that's mine and I want to be a part of it.
Biggest negative surprise?
I would say biggest negative surprise is that once we were successful, how many companies rated us for talent and threw crazy money at people that we had taken out of college and really helped them develop and build their careers. And it wasn't surprising, but it was, to me, I was like, you're so lazy. Like all you do is you just wait for all of our people to get really good and try to pinch them. But we're able to retain a lot of people, but that's business. It's competitive there, and that's capitalism. Yeah. So I get it, but on a personal level, when you invest in somebody deeply and then you realize everyone else is trying to throw the bag at them, it hurts a little bit.
Well, listen. That's is a quick solve. Just up the bag a little bit more, Dan. Everybody has a number. Everybody has a number. Just up it.
They do have a number, but I'm trying to stay in business and manage my costs.
Absolutely,
too.
Absolutely.
I think our employees are happy, and every single one of our employees is a shareholder in Overtime, so they see that big picture too.
Absolutely. Any competitors in the space that you would say?
I wouldn't say any direct competitors, but I think the professional sports leagues, especially the NFL and the NBA, they are constantly innovating. Like I know some people like to say, they're dinosaurs or not, but they're thinking about mid-season tournaments. They're thinking about Thursday night football. They're thinking about rule tweaks about how Trey and James Harden can't foul in the same way. Like there are a lot of really smart people there. And I think that we have a lot to learn from them. And I hope that we do things that they think are interesting too, and want to copy from us. And, we broadcast on Amazon now. We have a deal with Amazon Prime
Hmm.
Video to broadcast our games. And they've been an incredible partner to push us on innovation. And if we do something that's interesting that other leagues take, like that to me would be really cool. That means we're contributing to kind of the sports and the culture ecosystem
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Listen, you're in a society now. Last thing I'll let you go, where you're seeing so many entrepreneurs pop up left and right because of social media, and that's giving them platforms to have their own channel, basically their own radio podcast. I mean, it's just the floodgates are open for an entrepreneur that's coming, and they see Dan Porter and they see what you've done with overtime. What advice would you give them?
I think it's funny. This is the advice that I would give them. In basketball, we bring like all the best players in the country to play in our league. And our coaches and our trainers and our staff always say, you know what? There are 450 people in the NBA. There are 10 superstars and 440 role players. And those 440 role players can build an incredible career. They can be in the NBA and for 10 years and make millions of dollars if they understand what their role is, because there are not 450 superstars. And when people kind of grab me and say, I want to start my podcast and I want to build my brand, I say, kind of like, you have to know what your lane is. And you have to know what your role is. And you have to own that, because nobody's looking for you, to use a basketball metaphor, to play the one, the two, and the three. They're looking for you to understand you're a 3-and-D guy, or you're in there for 5 minutes of energy. And I think it's true in content and in media as well. And if you can really understand your positioning in your lane, you can be successful. And if you're a little bit of everything and you don't understand that, there's really not going to be any space for you.